Ooh. Oh. Ta-da! Hey everybody, welcome back for the first vlog of September. I'm already getting excited for October, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Last week, I talked about setting and achieving goals through the use of milestones. And I figured a nice follow-up to that would be, what happens when you fail? So you can watch that video by clicking on the card that just popped up in the right-hand corner of the screen. Don't worry, if you go to watch that, I'll still be here when you get back. So I am excited to announce that I did finish the Kingdom Lock Inspector, which is the drawing you'll see me working on in this video. You'll actually have a lot more progress to see in this video. I think it's about 4 hours of work that I put in, and it'll all be sped up to fit within this approximately 10-minute video. Now that the Kingdom Lock Inspector is done, I will be focusing on the Beast until we get that one done. And I'm going to go straight from sketch to finished painting with that one. So I figure it'll probably take me the better part of the month, if not the whole month. This week, I'm going to talk about failing and how we can deal with failure when we do encounter it. If you're not already subscribed, I hope you'll choose to do so by the end of the video. So, the more you try to do, the more likely you are to fail. In fact, if you want to get really philosophical with it, the act of succeeding is actually just failing to fail. Think about that one for a minute. So, failure doesn't need to be a complete failure. It doesn't need to be a horrible thing or something that you dread happening. Failure can be a small thing. Like if you're doing something complicated, it might be failing to complete one little piece of that process, at least, or failing to complete it like perfectly. Less than perfect is still usually acceptable, but would still be counted as a failure. We just don't usually think of it that way. So, as a tangible example, if you're taking a test, let's say that test has 20 questions, and you answer 19 of them correctly, you still failed at one question, but you passed the test. You probably won't think about it anymore, or you might research that question so you can answer it right in the future, or you might dwell on it, which is not a good thing. But those are the three common things that might happen when you fail at something. You'll either just move on, or you'll figure out how to do it right, or you'll dwell on it, either until you do it right or until it ruins you and makes you insane. Depending on the size or the scale of our failures, our reactions will be different. This previous example, the questions on a test, minimal or small reactions. Maybe even just subconscious reactions rather than any kind of outward emotional bursts or anything like that. But in a bigger mistake or a bigger failure, like say you wrecked your car, you might yell out some expletives, or you might hit something and be really angry. There's different, like I said, different levels depending on what happens. And then, of course, you go through and work on rectifying the situation, doing whatever you need to do. So, as I mentioned earlier, in any complex process, there are a lot of things that can go wrong, and there are often new or unexpected challenges to overcome. So, we're going to focus on the smaller challenges or whatever that might result in failures rather than the large catastrophes, because once you've learned how to do something fairly well, you're going to fail smaller. You're not going to fail at the whole thing. You're going to fail at some little part of it, and you'll have to figure out how to do that better if you want to master what you're working on. So whenever we do something, we most likely want to have the final result be as awesome as possible. I mean, that's why we're doing it, right? But you might not know how to achieve those results, and so you might have to research a little bit. But regardless of what you do, you're going to have to come to the point where it's time to actually, you know, start working. Put the pencil to the paper, start laying bricks, whatever you're doing. You have to start making the thing for real. And as soon as you start working on the actual project, things are going to go wrong because that's the nature of things. It's not something to dread, but it is something to accept and understand and work your way through. The most important thing is understand or try to understand why something goes wrong. Don't just assume that because something went wrong, the whole thing is wrong, so you'll never attempt to do it again. That leads to the mentality that if something is difficult, it is impossible. And that is a very limiting attitude to have. I've met a lot of people that have this attitude. If something is difficult, then there's no reason to even try it because it's too hard. It's impossible. And it's sad. When we're doing something, as soon as we notice that something is going wrong, we should stop and evaluate the situation. Willfully continuing to work on something, knowing that it's wrong and hoping that it's going to turn right, is just going to make more work for you if you have to fix it later. If you're planning on getting the thing done right, as soon as you notice there's a problem, you have to stop, you have to figure out why it's wrong, and fix it. Because otherwise, it just leads to more wrong stuff. Nothing magically becomes right in the end. So, and if you continue to work on something, if you continue putting this thing together, doing something you know is wrong, and then building on top of it, chances are it's either going to be impossible or really hard to fix later on. It might even be so hard to fix that it's worth just starting over. Completely scrap the project and start over. Now, what you learn from failing is a way of not achieving something. So, if you do something 10 times and fail 10 times, you've learned, well, assuming you did it differently every time, you've learned 10 different ways of not doing that thing. And this is actually useful to you in other similar challenges. If you know that certain things will not work together, then you're not going to try them later when you're working on something else if it involves the same kind of processes or the same kind of materials. So failure is a great teacher. Or the two worst responses to failure are extremes. Continuing to do something the same way while expecting a different result is both extreme and, I believe, also the definition of insanity. And, of course, refusing to try to do anything because it might not work out is the other extreme. So you want to be somewhere like right in the middle, or you want to still try, but you want to change up what you're trying. You want to learn, you want to analyze, and improve. So, in anything that we're doing, as we become closer and closer to mastery of that skill or that process, even when we do make little mistakes, people won't notice them, or most people won't, because you'll have learned all the big steps, and when you do make a mistake, it might even be something that you can correct right then, and no one will even know the difference, unless they were watching you really closely and they know the process too. So that's one of the big, what do you call it, the big transitional, or the big differences between being a beginner at something and being a master at it. In the beginning, you're probably going to make big mistakes that everybody's going to notice as soon as it happens. As you get closer to mastery, maybe it looks flawless, even though you might know yourself that it was not. As you become closer to mastery, even the mistakes you make might be interpreted by others as flair or style or something like that, something particular to the way you do things, even though you might realize it was just a mistake. If you've enjoyed this discussion on failure, please hit the like and subscribe button to help support my artistic endeavors and the creation of these videos. Join my Patreon or purchase merchandise through Pixels, or even commission me through Fiverr. All of the links for those can be found in the video description. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next video.